What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today I wanted to go back to something we've talked a lot about going into training camp, and we didn't have games and stats to discuss, right? When we were talking about how Aaron Glenn, Darren Muji, how they were trying to build a culture here as part of the Glennaissance. Shout out to Sharon McLean and everybody else. Remember, you can click on the description in this video, become a Jets latest insider, get access to all sorts of great stuff. But back then, we were talking about how Aaron Glenn was very intentional, very specific about what he wanted in the building, right? The character traits he wanted in guys that he would sign in free agency, guys that he would draft, guys like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner and Sherwood who were signed to extensions, how we wanted to build this. And the other part of that was really like the vision about the physicality, the versatility, and all that, but also pride in the green and white. You know, for the better part of a decade, it's been things like the butt fumble and other sorts of jokes about, the Jets in the NFL, about how they're almost like a laughing stock. And I think Aaron Glenn really has brought pride back, talking about this is the job he wanted, bringing former Jets back onto the sidelines, right? Talking about what the standard is. And he continues to do that. He was at the microphone the other day, and I think he continues to, bring this up. And it's an important thing for Aaron Glenn, who was a former Jet, a former Pro Bowler Jet, right? And kind of saying, this is the expectation. Listen to what he has to say. What I feel about this organization, which I've talked about many times, that's motivation for me. There are things that happened when I was a player you just don't forget, like the '98 season. There's a number of things that have happened that I think about every morning that gets me excited for this job. Plus, I just love what the hell I do. It's not hard for me to come in every day with a smile on my face. I love coaching football. I love being around the players and coaches. This is the best job in the world for me. Every day I am living my dream. I think it's important to have a guy whose dream job is to be with the New York Jets and part of this turnaround. I'm telling you, there are so many ways that really this fan base needs to be excited about Aaron Glenn. Everything from the pride he's trying to instill to you see him on the sidelines not tolerating penalties or sloppiness. Remember that halftime interview in the game against the Giants? I think that's really important. Even like I said, bringing in players back from, the old era onto the sidelines during training camp. So some of these young guys, and remember, the Jets have the second youngest roster in all of football, see that there is pride to have with this team. And I also say, check this out. By the way, Aaron Glenn is the fourth choice to be the coach of the year. If you want a futures bet, how about Aaron Glenn to be coach of the year at 11 to 1? If this turnaround does in fact happen, better than 10 to 1 on your money, behind only Ben Johnson, new coach of the Bears, Mike Vrabel, new coach of New England, and Liam Cohn, new coach over in Jacksonville. And part of that pride, I've said it before here on Jets Latest, he's a former player for this organization. 5 head coaches in the NFL have that to be true. The Jets with Aaron Glenn, Dan Campbell in Detroit. You see how that pride is a big thing there. Vrabel in New England, kind of reclaiming that after being down in New England for a while. Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles, a great motivator, has had success in everywhere he has been. And also D'Amico Ryans in Houston. And you see how the Houston Texans have turned it around recently. I've spoken to beat reporters over there in Houston, and they really credit D'Amico Ryans with the same kind of pride and passion as being part of that turnaround. What I also want to talk about is how it is trickling down. You hear everyone of the same voice with the same message in that Jets locker room and in front of the podium. And I think Garrett Wilson is a really big part of this, right? Garrett Wilson is going to be a cornerstone for this team, extended through 2030. Obviously, our alpha wide receiver. And he really fits not only the production, I mean, he's a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver, but also these characteristics, traits. And hear what he said. He's talking about the same thing about how it doesn't matter that he got the money. He still wants to be showed now that he's underpaid still, right? And what a culture fit he is. Listen to what Garrett Wilson had to say about what it means to be a Jet and what it means to be working with this coaching staff. He goes, from talking to the staff and getting to know their philosophy and what they want to see out of me as far as being bought in, more ownership, it being a little more personal. This is my home right here. So we got to get this thing rolling, not just because of me, but because that's what all of us come here to do, right? We want to come and leave a legacy, man, and mine is going to be here. I want to be as great as it can be, and there's certain ways you got to act if you really mean it. Talking about the character, the way of acting. I remember Garrett Wilson was one of the first people to talk about the no block, no rock, and how he appreciates the expectations that are put on him now that weren't there in the previous regime. And then straight up, when it comes to production, Garrett Wilson, I think, is underrespected and easily one of the top wide receivers in the league. Listen, he signed that big extension last year. He's one of only 7 wideouts to have over 1,025 yards in each of his each of the last 3 seasons. And that was Garrett Wilson's first 3 seasons. Look at these other names: A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, and of course, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. We're talking about truly the top of the food chain when it comes to wide receivers in this league. And I think that's important, again, from the coach and the staff trickling down to the leaders, and how that then trickles down to the young players who may be new to this organization, who may be new to the NFL as a whole, to see pride, to have that attitude, that vision, that work ethic, that dog, quite frankly. And there's been a couple of wide receivers we've talked about recently. Arian Smith, we've talked about B. Smitty, Brandon Smith, and I want to give some love to Quentin Skinner as well. Quentin Skinner is another one of these young wide receivers that may be making a case for a roster spot. Listen to what Justin Fields had to say about Arian Smith, but Quentin Skinner as well recently. He goes, "You could kind of tell early that these guys were going to be special. I brought up Arian a few weeks ago and how his speed really helped stretch the defense vertically and how much of a deep threat he is. I think Q has done a great job of making plays. Of course, he's a big body. He's a smooth route runner with solid hands, and he can go up and get it. These guys have made a big plays for us, and I'm excited to see what they do this week." Remember, Skinner also had that touchdown catch, that one-handed grab you saw in the picture against the Giants. Aaron Glenn said that he, along with B. Smitty, were kind of positives. And I like how Justin Fields says, I want to see what they're going to do this week. This Friday, against the Eagles, is the last preseason game before it gets going for real against the Pittsburgh Steelers in a couple of weeks, right? And so the wide receiver room, there's been a lot of talk, right? There's new young guys like Brandon Smith, Quentin Skinner, Arian Smith. There's veterans like Tyler Johnson, Alan Lazard, Josh Reynolds. And then there's like these old guard guys, okay? And that to me is guys like Malachi Corley, guys like Xavier Gibson. And quite frankly, it looks to me like these new guys have leapfrogged the old guard. And I've made this point that when you have a new regime and you're trying to build something, you want to do it with your guys. So I'm going to say once again, I believe the Jets wide receiver room is going to obviously have Garrett Wilson, obviously have Josh Reynolds, Tyler Johnson, Arian Smith, who we just drafted, Alan Lazard, who's a veteran who will be on this roster. I think that leaves 2 other spots. I think it's going to be Brandon Smith, and I think it's going to be Quentin Skinner. And I think these are young guys who have bought in and flashed for the new brain trust and regime. And I think they're going to beat out guys like Xavier Gibson, beat out guys like Malachi Corley. And you don't need Gibson anymore in even the special teams game because you got Caney. You got guys like Donovan Edwards, who I think can make the cut as we kind of remake this offense, remake this roster in a vision of the new leadership. So keep an eye out, not only for guys like Brandon Smith, but for guys like Quentin Skinner as well. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. But remember, as I always say, thank you so much to everybody who's subscribed to the channel, watches regularly, likes, comments, tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. And remember, you can become a Jets Latest insider if you click that button. Exclusive access, more videos, other kind of perks as the season goes along. But I love engaging with you, and I really like what you guys have to say, not only about me and the content, but also about the green and white here in 2025. Like, check this out. Chosen One says, "I've seen all I need to see. We may not make the playoffs, but we will be better than last year." And I agree. Listen, my official prediction is for us to win 9 games. I think we're going to be better. I think the arrow's pointing in the right direction. I trust Glenn and Muji to build this in the right way, but we do have to be patient, and that I think is leveled expectations. We may not make the playoffs. I always say we're not going 13-4, okay, unless all things break right, but we will be improved. This organization, this fan base, I think we can finally be proud of the product we are seeing, and that goes back to that pride from Aaron Glenn. Frank Ravato, 2311, says, "How long before G5 gets mad?" And that's interesting, right? Like, I talked about how Justin Fields is 0 for 4 targeting Wilson, but I think that's why I mentioned this today. Garrett Wilson is going to be a model teammate and a model leader. And part of that involves not getting mad, not showing frustration, okay? And I don't think Garrett Wilson's going to get mad. I think he's just going to continue to build. He's going to talk about the offense, the coaches, the young guys in the right way. So I understand where you could see frustration, but I don't think Garrett Wilson is going to show that. So to answer your question, Frank, I don't think he's going to get mad. And then also, Gail Barry, 9260, says, excellent analysis. I just subscribed. Glad I did. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the growth of this channel. We continue to get more subscribers. I will be here every day, the preseason, the offseason, the regular season, in hopefully what is a fun and exciting 2025 for the green and white. Remember, if you want to talk Jets latest, hit me up in the comments. I mention you on the show. Hit me up on social media at Spittin' Speeds on Twitter or X. And if you want to hear more from me, Spittin' Statistician Dane Martinez, I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on Sirius XM, channel 87. That's the fantasy channel, because I have been a fantasy analyst for over a decade so far, okay? Helping you win your leagues and win that cash. You can catch me on channel 87 on the FTN Fantasy Show. Or if you have questions about that, feel free to hit me up as well. If you become a Jets latest insider, maybe that's part of some of the exclusive content and exclusive love I will give you to help you be a better fantasy player. But over at FTN Fantasy, so many great things, rankings, content, data tools to be a better fantasy player and a better sports bettor. But if you just want the green and white, Jets latest is the place to be. Tell a friend to tell a friend. I'll be back tomorrow as we get ready for the final preseason game against the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. But for now, we out of here. Peace.